that's time for a bathroom. And I think Councillor Sarah and Councillor Louise, yep. Yep. Okay. Yeah, perfect. Sarah, we're just going to have a quick toilet break. That should give Louise some time to come back. Okay. 4, 5, 6,
One more.
7. Okay, so Louise is there. Sarah?
And one.
Okay.
Louise, you have.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. We're good to go, right, at 8? Okay, we're good to go. Now, colleagues, I have the list of where we had got to. You'll recall that we had a motion and an amendment. Paula was on the list to speak. She's now left the meeting. So the next person to speak was, in fact, Louise. I might come back to her because I think she's still a minute away by the smile Sarah's giving me. And I think she just said thank you, if I'm reading lips right.
Oh. Do you have quorum now?
Right. So, Councillor Louise, you've got the floor. You were the next on the list to ask questions, I think.
You've got the floor. You said you're next on the list to ask questions. Yeah.
Let's go sit.
Oh, do you want to go? Do you want to go to the next person and come back to Louise while we find a seat that's
All right.
you in?
Yep. The next one I had was Anna, and she's gone. So, Maxine, Councillor Maxine.
Remember what I'm going to say now. It's coming back.
Should we put both of them up?
Downstairs should be all right.
Yeah, okay. So some staff recommended funding proposals. So some of the proposals that are in the yes box are being held at council facilities or spaces. And earlier in the day, when we think about the World Manu Champs, there was the suggestion that in kind is offered to them as a way of being able to help them complete, meet their needs. So thinking about that and the ones that have said yes, are we also offering in kind to those organisations for the use of, I think, Claudelands?
Yes, in some instances we are where we can offer some support or assistance that is at no cost to council or no incremental cost to council. And so in the case of Claudelands, yes, we are charging fees, but that's invariably for direct costs associated with what they're doing. The Arts Festival is a really great example where Hamilton Gardens actually provide a lot of in-kind support and service purely by access to use the gardens venues for their locations and a few other services. So yes, there's a mixture there.
And do we have any kind of visibility over what the total quantum might be then? So if we were offering...
Yes, we have reported that previously, especially in the case of the gardens. I think the notional value of the in-kind for the gardens, I think from memory, is around $50,000 or $60,000. If you were to put a dollar monetary figure on it.
Right, yeah, and that's in addition to the funding that we would give.
Correct, yeah.
And then can the same be said of the marching? Is it the marching that's it?
Yes, the marching,
Claudelands?
there is, look, I'll describe it as a discount for the marching.
Okay.
Yep.
And is that a little bit like the community discounts that we have on the other council properties?
Yep.
And I think the other really large one is the balloons as well.
Correct.
And so there's similar discounted offering.
The balloons they have access to a lot of our public spaces, like Innes Common in particular,
of course.
which they use. For the Night Glow, which there was, as you'll recall, was held at Claudelands, we did charge them for that, but it was primarily charges for costs and so forth. And there was a small notional hireage that we did charge them because we felt we needed to sort of set a bit of a precedent there. for ongoing basis, because we do think we should be getting a little bit more koha for what we do there for them.
And any kind of dollar figure for that in
around
your
10,000.
assessment?
It's around 10,000 in that instance, I think.
And I understand that some of that was, in fact, Hamilton City Council, through the mayor potentially hosting at the Balloons.
I'm not
at the
sure.
Claude event.
I'm not,
The Balloons over Waikato Night Glow or something,
Yeah.
wasn't it? Yeah.
I'm not sure what you're referring to there in terms of the mayor. She was a guest there.
Oh, okay.
Off the Balloons Waikato, along with a few other elected members. So
Okay.
I'm not sure that there was any other.
Oh, okay.
role.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks for clarifying
Yeah.
that. That's
They,
it for me, yeah.
At the Nightglow, what the Balloons do every year is they have a small VIP area, which
Oh, okay.
has some pretty basic nibbles and a couple of drinks and that too, as a thank you for sponsors.
So I've got a list that we had in the past, which I'm going to go off. But before I go any further, Councillor Louise, your amendment, could you just confirm who your seconder is?
Can I ask Councillor Emma to second it?
I'm sorry, you'll have to repeat that.
Sorry, can you hear me okay?
Yeah, slightly better now. Were you asking whether or not Councillor Emma would second?
Yes.
Thank you. Okay, so thank you. I just wanted to make sure I've got that on the tape. Right, so what I understand is we've got the motion, which is the staff's recommendation, which I've moved and Councillor Mark second. And then we've got an amendment from Councillor Louise, seconded by Councillor Emma. I understand the difference is, I think I've got this right, that the Boone Street does receive funding. Yep, right, so it's really E, F and G. And I think I'm correct in saying that it's no new money, but it's a reprioritisation. So some groups get a small reduction to
That's
make
changed.
the quantum for Boone.
Yeah.
No, that's
No?
not the.
No.
Okay,
That has changed to a recommendation from this committee that the Boone Street money be considered as a part of the annual plan process. So it's not approving the $50,000 for Boone Street, but recommending that council consider it as a part of a new expense item under the upcoming annual plan sign-off.
okay, that's much. Okay, sorry, Councillor Louise, there have been some iterations and I'm now much clearer. So really we're kicking it to the annual plan in terms of the Boone Fest. Okay.
Yeah.
Perfect. Right, I've got Councillor Moku, then I've got Kesh, then I've got Louise. And then Jeff. What's wrong?
Oh, no. Sorry. I thought I was after. No.
I'm going off my list that my
Very good.
good governance staff
Very good.
gave me.
Yeah.
Equity is everything.
Okay, the pie. Hey,
You
sorry.
don't have to ask a question.
Yeah, no, I do have a question though. Murray, who makes the decisions around where the funding goes?
You do, this council committee.
All right, those are the ones that you've just put
Yes,
on.
what you have in front of you are my recommendations.
Right, your recommendations, can't pie. I'm really, I'm a fan of one of these applications, and that's the Ako Aroro Māori expert. I'm quite keen, and I'm not saying that I disagree with your decision. I'm wanting to know what sort of supports in kind we are going to be offering that particular applicant. They asked for $50,000. They're not going to get 50. They're not going to get anything from us. Well, not funding wise anyway, but I'm wondering if we're able to support them because they've got a large event. It's the first of its kind in Kirikiriroa. I think there's lots of spin-offs for us here. But what sort of support are we going to give them outside of the funding?
I'm just having a look at the file to remind myself.
Claudelands Showground.
Yeah, look, they have a discounted rate at Claudelands. Let me just look up the notes here. Here we go. Yeah, I think, we looked at this. There was, I guess, there wasn't, yes, it's a great event. Don't get us wrong. And yes, it's a reasonably good number, but it didn't seem like a strong number for generating overnight stay or new visitors to the city, as opposed to being reasonably well weighted towards people within the immediate vicinity. And I guess we also looked at the calibre of the other funders that they have received for this event, which is quite a high calibre, to be fair. And frankly, given the challenge of our funding decisions, that's the basis of our recommendation.
Yeah, I'm not questioning the recommendation.
But as an event, definitely.
I'm just wondering if we're giving them support in other ways.
Well, look, as I say, we certainly, my team offered them a discount at Claudelands, which is just part of our haggle that we have, to get events if the spaces are available. So,
I guess this just falls on the back of one of Councillor Van Oosten's questions around getting a bit of optics around what that might look like in its entirety. So, because at the end of the day, we might not have given them the money that they've asked for, but we're actually continuing to support their event in some way, shape, or form.
Yeah. So look, I'm just looking at their budget, and we are charging them for venue hire around $35,000. So, looking at the totality of the event, I suspect we've given them a 50% discount.
And that's a significant contribution. Right.
Thank you. Councillor Cash, then I've got Yes, and then she's just
Thank you. Sean, I know the recommendations have come from you, but who is there an allocation panel for this one?
No, the process is that I make the recommendations that comes through, and this effectively acts like the panel in terms of that's why you have all the applications been provided and so forth for you. So
it used to be through a panel, eh?
No, well, as long as I've been here, it's always been worked through under this process, quite different to the community group.
Yeah.
And so forth. Now, you'll recall that in the previous triennium, we did have a year, I think, where we provided all of this information to yourself and one other, I think, from the community committee. But I'll be honest, it didn't work that well because of the timeframes we're working to. We have very tight timeframes, and so we found that we weren't really getting the input until this meeting.
So the rating and all of that stuff, you've done it.
Yes. So we have a cover sheet, which is the cover sheet that you have on the papers you've got for each application, and there is the criteria that's in the policy document in terms of where we do it. And what we do, it's is we just go through that and we do a scoring against the criteria. And when we do that, we actually quite often adjust the scoring back and forth when we've looked at other applications and say, okay, hang on, have we got that balance right between the applications? So it takes quite a while.
So it's difficult to judge because we don't have the financial stuff that you obviously receive with an application.
You have all the application information.
So, for example, the arts festival.
Yeah.
There have been conversations in the past around financial viability of the event and all of that. So I just have a question around the funding that's being recommended. It's a $55,000 jump compared to previous years.
Mm-hmm.
So how is that? What is the justification for that?
I mean, basically every year we've sort of had emergency funding discussions and help discussions where we have been voting in more than that base. And it's at the end of the day now, I wasn't part of the meeting because I've been away for a few weeks. But my understanding is that the trust met with the mayor and maybe yourself, Chair, to have a talk through, and the Deputy Mayor and yourself to talk that through, and hence, based on that sort of feedback, and also looking at the nature of the history of the trust and everything else and the challenges that they have to deliver such a good event, I felt that, in my view, it was warranted
All right.
because cost increases have been huge.
Yeah.
They really have.
You're right. I was in attendance at a meeting.
Yeah.
There weren't any formal recommendations made.
No,
from
it was an informal meeting. They wanted to talk through the situation.
So the policy review that's going on at the moment, just checking, this doesn't fall under that review at all, right? The grants assistance policy is totally separate to this.
Yeah, it says the major event sponsorship fund policy, which is different to the community policy.
All right. And so this policy will be up for review soon-ish, or not really?
Yeah, we did it a couple of years ago, and I think there's every reason for us to rethink that.
Yeah.
Yes, time for a review. We discussed that earlier on this morning.
Yeah.
As to, should the criteria be changed? Should the weighting from economic and social benefit go to more community social weighting, which might take it out of this committee and put it somewhere else? And once again, it came back to that simple fact that it's set up largely surrounding sort of economic and social benefit, but because a lot of these events which are more community orientated have nowhere else to go to council, they always still come to us, even though they don't fit the criteria.
Yeah. Okay, I had a question about the amendment, because in the last part, it actually mentions community funding policy, some wording to that effect. It doesn't actually talk about this policy, or I just wanted to clarify what that amendment.
Yeah.
Yeah, if we could get that up on the board again. And is your question directed at governance or
Probably,
the mover of the motion?
Louise, yeah. Is it meant to say?
Councillor
community funding
Louise,
policy?
did you hear that question?
Yeah, I did. I had hoped that wording was broad enough to include this policy, but if you'd like it to be updated to better reflect that, I'm fine with that.
Perhaps if I could add, my understanding was that this was a part of a discussion about whether or not there'd be a change in how we actually put funding together for certain events so that we can actually fund them quite separately in their own right, because of the nature of who they are, as opposed to them always coming year after year after year. And especially for those sort of events that are both significant and also fall outside the major events policy. So Boone Street was an ideal example of that. And perhaps Matariki we've talked about. It's like we have a separate standalone funded arrangement for Christmas, and it's just basically because every year, to be fair, we have the same conversation about the same challenges and everything else. And for the organisers of those major events, the lack of certainty year on year on year, and even with a 3-year cycle, is sometimes quite challenging for them to get other sponsors in. So it was just a conversation for the LTP that we consider whether or not there's another way of looking at that for those specific events.
Okay. Thanks. I think that's all I have.
That's it. Okay, I've got Councillor Louise, and then I have Councillor Maxine.
Thank you. I guess my question was probably to Sean. There was some discussion or an idea put forward by Councillor Hamilton earlier in the day around basically previously council had taken little bits off other people in this fund and given that to Boone as a way of funding it in a one-off capacity. But I appreciate the thought behind that, but I guess I'm just curious around, have we funded the successful applicants to success with what we have currently funded them to? And if we took money off them to make a Franken fund for Boone from it, would we be jeopardising all of the other events' ability to be successful?
Look, in response to your question, I think that's, well, first of all, it's a very, very good question. And there are some instances where we have cut our funding back or have not funded some events to the level that they needed, which has actually put them in jeopardy. Without doubt. And that is the challenging thing. So, for example, there was a Matariki thing, there was a discussion about, reducing it by 25,000. This was the council thing. And the response that I got verbally, not formally in this meeting, but was, well, if you're going to cut that back, we've got to ask ourselves, do we do it? By such an amount. The other thing I'd have to say is that you'll notice that some of the recommendations here that are in this paper from me have actually suggested an amount that is actually a reasonable amount, quite a bit less than what the applicant actually asked for. So, for example, marching, the marching event, New Zealand Marching Championships, which are actually a great event because they generate a lot of people. A lot of competitors, a lot of overnights. We've got a recommendation taking that from 30,000 requested down to 13,000, just in an attempt to make it fit the budget, so that we can give them something. Now, we advised all of the applicants of our recommendations after this paper had been released for this meeting, and that group in particular were a little bit very sad because they just felt that that's going to really challenge them. So your point is well taken. But having said that, it is a contestable fund. People do have to compete for the funding. There's a lot of people that have made applications that we are declining outright, and the level of funding is what it is, and applicants are made very well aware of just how big a fund we do have. The challenge we have is if you've got a national-based organisation like, say, the Marching Champs, and they're used to other councils having a different approach because of their budget levels, and I think that's sometimes where we struggle with the conversation.
Chair, may I ask a second question?
You sure may.
Thank you. Thank you for that, Sean. That was really useful. I was also wondering if I could just clarify a comment that you made earlier, where you said that the fund hadn't increased over the entire time that you had been at council. I was wondering if I could just clarify what that time period was, if you don't mind.
I don't like to admit to it. I've been here a little over 10 years now. It has, now just to be fair, it has had a CPI adjustment each year, which happens through the annual plan process. But we did reduce it in my first year, I think, when there were just a whole lot of very small community type activities coming to it. And what we did is we released some funding to the community grants system so that it was in a better home.
Cool. Thank you. That's all.
Thanks, Councillor Louise. Councillor Maxine, and then I've got Councillor. Look, I'm actually sorry. Can I go to Councillor Jeff?
Yeah, I thought he was in front of me.
Yeah, and so look, I've just got confused. Councillor Jeff.
Thank you, Chair. You and actually no, you weren't at fault. My question was answered, so I put my hand down, but then another question arose.
Okay.
So, look, I do still have a problem with the Arts Festival in terms of out of the meeting that happened with the Mayor and Deputy Mayor and Kesh with Arts Festival people, was that ever kind of presented to the rest of the council, what came out of that meeting, in terms of a case being made for why the sudden leak?
I don't think that anything came out of the meeting other than those, the Trust wanted just the opportunity to speak to that particular group to put their case forward. They still, however, put their application forward. And so the applications that you see in this paper is what everyone has received and gets. Yeah.
Okay. So look, I'm asking this question because at this stage I don't feel like I'm in a position to support the Arts Festival funding. And I don't see the visibility of why we've leapt up to 175 for 3 years in a row. And to be honest, I'm not comfortable with it. So I guess I'm trying to get some more reassurance, Sean, on this, really. I don't really know what I can ask you. I'll probably just have to vote against it.
Yeah, look, all I can say is their application has put their budgets in. We have had, as I said earlier on, we've had the past experience of them having financial challenges and us finding money from places to help get them caught up. And I guess it's just about a matter of a reset in terms of what they're doing. They have been working hard to cut their cloth. They've been, they've reduced in areas some of the work that they do. They've had an adjustment of the sort of acts and so forth that they get in to try and make it more affordable. So I think they have been working pretty hard, but it is just, it's an expensive thing to stage.
Right. And so one supplementary question. So respectfully, when does this council make a choice between allowing an event to limp on and actually bringing it to a head? I mean, you've seen this event for a long time. You've recommended this, and yet they've been struggling for years. If we were to vote against this today, would it not bring an opportunity to actually bring this to a head?
Well, I guess, yes, it would bring it to a head. The question is, do you want it to close or not? And
maybe it needs to close.
Yeah, that's right. And so I would expect that if, for example, we declined any funding for this event, that may possibly lead to a closure, or it may well put itself on dry ice for a year or two while they regroup for funding. And I guess that's the question: is Hamilton happy to do that or not?
So I guess my question is the arts festival viable anymore? Do we need something different?
Yes, well, I guess the festival is viable if there's supporters and sponsors at the end of the day. The festivals, like all the arts festivals around the country, they're only viable if they get sponsorships from the city and also private sector companies and so forth. So that's the only thing that makes these events viable. And I would argue that they all suffer similar challenges year on year right around the country, bearing in mind that the funding levels that are required. So the question about, is there something to replace it? I'm not aware of anyone stepping up with an idea on what to replace it with. We have been asked from time to time, can Hamilton City Council replace it? Can Hamilton City Council do it? And I guess the answer is yes, but I would probably need quite a lot more money than what we currently spend, and I would probably find it much harder to get the corporate sponsorship that the trust are able to secure, because they are a trust and they're a group of private individuals volunteering an awful lot of time, whereas I'm a council worker and they'll say, oh, well, council can pay anyway. It isn't that easy to get sponsorship for some of these events directly as council.
Councillor Jeff, do you have any other questions?
Yeah, I only that I'm not sure if Sean, I wasn't saying replace it with another arts festival. I was saying maybe it's time for something different. Okay, no, I don't think I can take it much further. Thank you.
All right. I have to, just for clarity and transparency, remind all elected members that I also was at that meeting. And my understanding is Councillor Keshi came in a little late in the process. The meeting had been called by the mayor, by the Arts Festival.
I think by the chairman of the Arts Festival,
and Chris Williams and a number of people turned up, and we were there to listen to their application. I still have a speaking order, but I am just letting you know that as the mover of the motion, I've suddenly realised that I'm now having second thoughts about C, in the sense that we were locking the Arts Festival into a 3-year funding commitment, where I felt we were only doing it for a year and that we were going to have a meaningful discussion as part of the long-term plan. So I'm beginning to wonder if, in fact, we alter that particular motion and make C only 12 months for all the parties. And my explanation is that would align with somewhat the other amendment and part of the broader discussion of trying to work out how best are we suited to try to fix this funding. Because otherwise we seem to have given them a priority over the whole LTP process. Sean, your concerns regarding that?
I'm just trying to think the time frame for the LTP process, whether it will move in time for the first year one for these organisations to know that they will have some certainty over funding for the year one. But look, we'll have to make it work somehow. I actually understand exactly where you're coming from.
I'm trying to be helpful, and I'm accepting that we need to really thrash this whole quantum and mechanism out. And one of our challenges is they're all running at slightly different time periods. And so if we,
well, we just have to make it work. Yeah.
All right. So just, but out of respect, how do I, because that, I wouldn't be moving the staff recommendation. I'd be wanting to change the staff recommendation. Can I do that?
Yeah.
Right. So in theory, what we would be doing is joining B and C together, and then that aligns everyone to the LTP process. And then everyone can have a really meaningful discussion over the overall quantum and the processes. Sure.
Perhaps Sean and Blair, with regard to the time frame of the long-term plan from its initial discussions through to adoption, and on the viability of
Fair question.
these.
Yeah, and that is our concern, and I think we will be slightly out of sync. But what we'll, to be honest, we'll have to do is just find a way to make that work and make that happen.
So is there anywhere in, with that in mind, is there anything that in the offer that we make to them that we could qualify that process with, a caveat that it, it's a commitment for now, but that may change.
One option is for you to approve for the year 2023, which we're going into, and for the year 2024, which is the first year of the new LTP. But anything after that gets covered in the LTP discussion so that it kicks in year 2 of the LTP.
I wonder if
But
the
that gives-
mover
but
and the
that- but
seconder would
that's sort of
be
giving
happy with
you a
that kind of compromise.
Yeah, that's giving you a second year of approvals, which I think you're trying to avoid.
As worded at the moment, as I'm looking at the screen, where it says 2023 and 2024, it's referring to the calendar year. So I think that's because the Arts Festival in Balloons occurs in early 2024, which is the last part of the annual plan year, as I understand it. Because I think
the Arts Festival is 24. It's around the bridge. It's 23.
So it's a 23-24 financial year.
Yeah.
What I think, Maxine, as proposed by the Chair and Deputy, if you cast your mind ahead 12 months, we'll have a draft LTP. We'll be through submissions process. We'll be considering submissions.
Yeah.
So it may be that Sean would be bringing back recommendations based on the draft LTP funding envelope, and decisions would be subject to the confirmation of the LTP. And so that would be probably how it would work. So council will have determined an envelope, but the final decision may depend on the final LTP.
So
I'm comfortable with that, Maxine. I mean, clearly you may be more inclined to support the amendment, albeit that the amendment sort of triggers that more meaningful discussion anyway, doesn't it, through E, G and F?
So if I could suggest that C1, the years 24 and 25 are struck out. For C2, 20. Oh, you've already done it?
Yep. Yep, just there. We put it up on the.
Oh, I see. Sorry.
Oh, no.
Because it's the 24.
So that you wouldn't make any commitment to the Arts Festival?
I was going to ask that So that one's sitting on the 24, 25.
Yeah,
Is it still?
yeah. So I would actually leave
Yeah.
the,
I mean, it does.
I'd leave it as it is now with the original thing, but just strike out under Round the Bridges 2024 and strike out 2025. Under Hamilton Arts Festival, strike out 2025, 2026. And
Sorry, you're putting it all under B, aren't you? The wording in B, and B says in the 23-24 financial year, colon, and then if you just list the events, the amounts,
oh,
and it covers
Sorry.
it. Like,
That
just,
covers it.
Sorry.
to just
Yeah, gotcha.
have your Matariki, hockey, march, and then you have
Yeah.
Round the Bridges, Hamilton Arts, and balloons, and remove any dates because they're covered in the opening
thank you.
part of B.
And in some
Fantastic.
ways, councillor Jeff,
Sorry.
this at least
good.
gives only 1 year certainty, and you can participate very much so in the broader discussion of the overall quantum as part of the LTP and whether or not this particular event is fit for purpose. Anyway, I've moved it. Councillor Marks seconded it. We also have the amendment, and I've got the next speaker as councillor Kesh.
Oh, I think it was me, actually. I gave
Oh.
way to Jeff. And that was the
I
questions
am
I asked
I am
were
so sorry.
of the changes that you were making. Yeah.
Okay, I'm
Yeah.
sorry.
Sorry, it's a
Councillor.
tiny question. It will take only
Go ahead.
seconds,
I do
really.
apologise.
I note in page 133 of the summary of the 22-23 funding activity that there is a surplus of $60,746 as a consequence of some events that were unable to be held. I wonder how that is treated and whether there's any opportunity to be able to, in the situation that we find ourselves in today, to access it.
That's presented as savings in the current financial year.
Okay.
It's already been locked and loaded, and we can't really rock it into this particular fund. We can't rock it into another year.
Very well. And that it therefore can form part, though, of the annual plan discussion that is proposed in the amendment.
No, because it's relating to this financial year that we're sitting in now. So by the time we hit 30 June, that savings being locked as a savings for that budget year.
Okay.
So we can't roll it into the next financial year.
No, Councillor Kesh, I'm getting tired, but I have a terrible feeling that you may have already asked one question, one round of questions.
Yeah, I just had one.
Okay.
First,
Otherwise, you're making me dinner.
the amendment, people are, the movers of the amendment, are they changing the dates as well, or is it just, is that staying as is, Louise?
No, sorry, Councillor Louise, that was a question to you.
Yeah, so I just wanted to clarify, sorry, I think some bits cut out, but I just wanted to clarify, would, by changing those dates, allow us flexibility in changing the policy? So say we change the policy later, would changing those dates give us flexibility of funding those groups differently from the new policy?
Yes.
Absolutely. That's the whole purpose, to enable us
Right.
to have a much broader discussion as your amendment requires. And it doesn't lock us in with protected species. It just enables us to have a new starting place.
But if I may add,
Yeah.
Chair, bearing in mind, you will still need to find new budget in order to do that.
Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah,
that's
yeah.
the whole point of the.
LTP.
Now, I want to be helpful. Yep.
Sorry, can I ask a clarifying question of Sean?
Yep.
I appreciate that in Councillor Wilson's motion, it's just 1 year. I think I saw that on the screen. Would it be possible for us to fund for 2 years while still giving flexibility, or is 1 year in terms of the timing with long-term
Right,
planning?
that question was already sort of asked and answered.
Okay.
You have heard it. But Sean, do you want to try to repeat your answer?
Yeah, I sort of thought of that myself, but I think if we're going to be true to the review and consistent with everyone who's applied for the 3-year funding, we need to stick to the 1 year as opposed to having any exception.
Okay. then I'm happy to update the amendment to be 1 year for those.
Are you okay with that?
In which case, I'm beginning to wonder, trying to be helpful, whether or not, Councillor Mark, you and I need our motion, because we're all, correct me, we're all singing now from the same song sheet. So Councillor Louise and Councillor Sarah, I think on the basis that you're altering the timing, I would then logically withdraw our motion, because we're basically verbatim. We're heading towards this meaningful dialogue as part of the LTP. We're providing some certainty for the next year. Boone has to put forward the best argument for the annual plan, but we then align everybody. So actually, this has been a really helpful and meaningful process. So have I got your understanding that what you've now agreed to is what you're going to do, Louise?
That would be very, very nice of you. If you wanted to withdraw, that would be nice. That would be great. What a lovely ending for the day.
Okay. So in which case, Councillor Mark, I'm inclined to withdraw our motion. In which case, we only have one motion, and that is the Councillor Sarah and the Councillor Louise and Councillor Emma's now becomes the motion. I am going to just give 30 seconds for the governance to make sure we're all correct. Councillor Kip, did you have?
One last small thing.
Yeah.
Just to Sean, with the Arts Festival division, you obviously
Thought about the disruption with the construction going on at the entry to the gardens and how that would affect the festival. And
Yeah, that will be managed by the team. That's
Okay.
fine.
Yeah.
Cool. Thank you. Yeah,
Right.
thank you.
Look, can I just say thank you, everybody? I think what we've ended up with is something really positive, and I think that's really good. So I intend to now put it. The councillor. Oh, sorry. Councillor Sarah, did you have a question or debate?
Yes, two very quick questions for clarification. One is, it was mentioned that Boone could put their best foot forward in terms of the annual plan, but I understand submissions have closed, so there'd be no opportunity for them to speak further on the matter, at least formally. Is that correct?
I would have thought that there was no limitation for them being able. Are they going to submit to the annual plan?
It's closed for submissions.
My question is, did they submit?
I don't know, but I doubt it, given that they probably weren't anticipating this.
We'll make it work.
There's an element of pragmatism here, Councillor Sarah. I'm sure they could present in public forum. I think they're very clear. We've got a motion that requires us to give it consideration. So I think are you comfortable with that?
Yeah, I'm sure we can work something through. The other thing is just, Sean, just in terms of that final paragraph around asking staff to kind of come back to us before the LTP, would that likely be a briefing, at which point we can also discuss whether current quantums are appropriate or if we want different options on the table?
Yes, I imagine it would have to be a briefing. It'll be a very big discussion, I suspect, to work through. The question I would have is the depth of work you require, because I could spend an awful lot of money and time doing an awful lot of investigation and research and checking out precedents and everything else like that on what is still a very subjective conversation. So I just need to work out the depth of analysis and input you want on this.
Okay. And obviously right now is not the time to, would there be a process for that?
We'll definitely do a briefing session.
Yeah.
I've got to question the amount that you require. I'll be blunt with you. I have no staff for this. It's just me and my EA. So I don't have a team that does this work.
I guess I point out the obvious to the mover and the seconder in your motion in G. you're requesting staff investigate the gaps in the current council event fund.
Yeah.
So I asked a simple question: had you turned your mind to the sort of quantum that you want staff to invest to give you that information, which goes to Sean's
Yeah.
point?
Well, so it would have to be to the mover and seconder, but Sean, is there a pragmatic way that we could have an initial conversation where you can get some guidance before doing work? Say if we just ask for a briefing on...
Absolutely. We can do that, have a conversation, definitely.
And at that stage, if you felt you needed a specific budget, you could let elected members know. Are you happy with that, Sarah?
Yeah.
I'm happy with that, as long as it's clear. We'll do that first and just maybe, cool, thank you.
I'd also just add to that that there is a community funding working group that's also analysing that in depth as well. So, you know, whether that can be brought at the table at the same time or considered at the same time. So,
that's a very good point. I guess the question is, will that group perhaps bring in some of these other things that come to this particular funding policy for funding and take that into consideration, like the Arts Festival, like some of the Matariki events and so forth.
It's quite good that you brought it up, because the chair of economic development, myself, Emma, Councillor Moko, and I think Sarah are on that working group already. So it's actually quite a good working group to just include this.
Okay.
If Helen agrees.
Right.
Just to stop double up.
Yeah.
All right. So look, I'm going to now put that. It's on the floor. Councillor Louise as mover. Would you like to speak?
I would like to speak, if that's if that's all right. Awesome, thank you. Hey, I really want to thank Sean in particular. I think I said this at community grants, but I literally couldn't think of anything worse deciding who gets funding and who doesn't. So I really want to acknowledge the hard job that we, or the hard role we put onto Sean in deciding that. Something that I've been reflecting on a lot through the discussion today has been just how hard it is for our community organisations and for our all the people who do such good work in our city and put great events on and run amazing community organisations, and how hard it is for them. When I think about Boone, I think about how in our election, how many candidates brought up Boone as an example of something to be proud of in our city. And yet here we are with them sort of sandwiched between not really fitting into our existing funding models, but being such a huge part of our city. And I think Ian made a really incredible point when he talked about how we get an 80% discount on these murals, and how the amazing Eagle Hawk over in Victoria on the river, how, you know, if we were going to pay a commercial cost for that it would be more than the entire fund perhaps. So I think those are really salient points, and I think we really should be valuing Boone and valuing this work that this community organisation has done, while also not taking from any of the other community groups who earnestly meet the criteria and earnestly also do great work. So I just want to thank elected members around the table for being really open to discussing this and looking at how we can show that we value the real diversity of events and organisations who make our city so amazing. Amy, how much time have I got? Oh, so good. So yeah, just I think this is an opportunity, and thank you everyone for working towards valuing our arts and events industries.
Look, this fund is fundamentally an economic enabler for Hamilton. It's not a community fund. It's never been a community focused fund. It's an economic enabling fund. So I completely appreciate Sean's work with the criteria for this fund based as an economic enabler. So I'm looking forward to the policy review and the briefing, because like Sean mentioned, there was never an appetite to address the quantum conversation before, but I think that there is there is an appetite to talk about that now because of the economic benefits that this fund brings to our city. And that is all I will say. Thank you.
Councillor Stevie / Sarah.
Thank you. We've now, I think, had 2 occasions where Boone has kind of been a bit left out in the cold because they don't fit into neatly into any of the criteria for our various funds. One was about 4 years ago, one was 1 year ago, and here we are again. And so I think this time it's really important that we do swiftly look at how we address this issue, because and they're not really the only one today that hasn't fitted neatly into, I guess, the criteria because of the focus of visitor nights and things in this fund. So I am really keen to ensure that we have a harder look at how we're enabling good events, not just ones which bring in visitors, but also ones that innately just the community really value and create a sense of place and things like that. So yes, very keen to be ensuring that through the annual plan, we also have a discussion around and hopefully come to a good outcome with the interim solution for this year until we get to the LTP, because I think there's been a strong message that otherwise Boone won't go ahead in any form without some form of council support. And I think that's fair given the huge amount of work that volunteers go to get external funding. I'll leave it there. Thanks.
Councillor Jeff, followed by Councillor Deputy Mayor. Angela?
Yeah, thanks, Pierre. Ewan, I won't take long. Look, Councillor Hutt rightly pointed out, how hard it is for people organising events and these groups. But I just also need to remind us that it's equally hard for ratepayers. We are in hard times, incredibly hard times actually, and they're going to get harder this year. And so while it may seem pedantic to be arguing over things such as the 175k for the Hamilton Arts Festival, I do think before we agree on a large increase over 3 years, we do actually need to kind of have a better case presented because, as great as this event is, and I accept that it brings people into Hamilton, it has been struggling for quite a long time. And at some point, maybe you need to say, okay, well, is the actual event right? Or is it time for something new? Is it time for a change? Events do get old. And I also have to question how many free nights there actually are at that arts festival. And when you've got an average price of $35, it's not actually for your average Hamiltonian anymore, I would suggest, most of it. We do, I hate to sound Gary Maletish, but we do have to remember that this is somebody else's money that we're playing with today before we justify big jumps like that. And at some point you have to kind of make that calculation and remember that, I think all of us. I'm happy with where we've ended up. We are going to have a substantive conversation about it, and I think that's much needed. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Jeff. Deputy Mayor Angela, then followed Councillor Pike, followed by Councillor Maxine.
Thanks, Chair. Look, this has been a really very lengthy discussion and lots of questions. I feel for anyone online that's still with us as we struggle with our hunger. But I just agree with all the comments everyone's made prior to me. We have had these discussions year on year, and it never gets easier. I certainly indicated quite some time ago, as have other members, that we need to look at the whole funding game again, not only to get some equity, but also, as Councillor Taylor raised, it is in tough times. and we need to make sure that our investments go to the right places. I also think because it's tough times, I really appreciate events like Balloons Over Waikato and Boone, which are totally free to people. And I think that makes it more accessible. The Arts Festival has quite a few of their events as well free. So I think when I reflect on that, I think it is an investment that is well spent. I think the positive impact in terms of economy and the economic impact does need to be looked at as well, but there are more benefits. When I think of a city that wouldn't have any really strategic free community events, I don't think that's a city most of us would enjoy. And I know we're, close up, we all get to experience these events during the times that they're on close up, and we have a great time and we post on our social media and we appreciate it while we're in it. But then as time moves on through the year and the event goes away, it makes it a bit difficult. So we do need to get the policy right. I look forward to those discussions in the LTP because, the LTP is going to be tough. We all know that, and we're going to have to prioritise all of the budget lines. So I look forward to that. Thank you, and well done, Chair. It's been a really long day of work. And now we can't hear the chamber. Oh, there we go.
Sorry. Thanks, Deputy Mayor. And we've now got Councillor Emma and Councillor Maxine.
Thank you, Chair. The reason I'm supporting this amendment is because I recognise that the current criteria doesn't reflect the value that Boone Festival holds. That being that they leave a legacy of beautiful murals across the city, which uplifts our CBD and neighbourhoods. We heard today from our speakers in public forum that for every dollar put in, there's $3 of value given. I know many involved in the group are largely doing so out of the kindness of their own heart. And I was speaking to a Boone artist today, actually, and they mentioned that they got compensated more for painting a Spark power box, which is about 1 by 1 meters, than they do for a full mural at Boone. So that's just a reflection of how those involved are doing so from a good place. And I also just make a brief note at a recent trip in Melbourne, how the graffiti, not the graffiti, but the murals have become a part of the branding and image of Melbourne. And I just can imagine the potential that we could leverage off Hamilton Kirikiriroa if we continue to support Boone Street mural projects. So enlightened of the long-term asset and value that Boone brings to Hamilton, that's why I'm seconding this amendment. Thank you.
Thank you. Happy to participate in this debate and recognise the excellent work that's gone into assessing. In my assessment, it was 470 odd pages. So thanks, Sean, for wading through all of that and making it easy for us with a summary page. That said, though, we are the economic enabler in this space, and it's really important for us to do that with diligence, and that this committee has the final say on it. As Councillor Pike reminds us, for every dollar that is handed out, though, these organisations are finding $2, $3, $4 more dollars to put towards it. Plus, they bring people into our city. They generate then night stays and support our hospitality sector as well. And that doesn't always get captured up in the overall assessment and the value of it. So, I do acknowledge that. In terms of Boone, they offer not just an event each year, but leave us with the legacy of that beauty around our city. I've said before around this table that I have an industrial designer son who I'd like to attract back to Hamilton because it's cool enough for him to come back to Hamilton. He tells me that hasn't happened yet, so I hold out hope that Boone can help with with that. So I'm really invested in making sure that we have a really good discussion around how we can make that happen. So kia ora everyone, and thanks very much. Been a good meeting,
Thanks,
Chair.
Councillor Maxine. Councillor Louise, you've got your right of, yes, I'm about to say rebuttal. I am getting tired, but you don't probably need to use it. But if you're inclined to use it, go ahead. The floor is yours.
My only final thoughts were just reflecting on the economics of it all, and I think that the handout that Charlotte and Ian gave out of all the times that we've used it in our marketing, I think speaks to the economic benefit, because certainly if you can't use it in your marketing, it's not of much economic benefit necessarily. So I just think that was a very well made point, and I really appreciate everybody's willingness to acknowledge the flaws in our system, and to review the system and work around it, because we know that Boone does contribute so much to the economic and many other ways to our city. So that's all. Let's vote.
Thank you. I'll put the motion. All those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Those against?
The motion is carried unanimously.
Woo-hoo. Thanks, everybody. It's been a long haul, but we've covered some good stuff. Cheers.
Thanks, Chair.
Thank you, Chair. You are very welcome.